Hello, colleagues. Welcome. Thank you very much for joining today. Good morning, afternoon, good evening from wherever you might join us today for this webinar on cultural relations and climate action. So while we're just letting everyone in and welcoming more colleagues, a few notes on what to expect today. So I invite everyone to put on your cameras if you feel comfortable, of course, just because it's nice and not to speak to an empty room, but to see the people you're actually speaking with. Just a note also, though, that we will be recording for anyone who cannot join us live today. So, of course, if you do not want to be on the video, then feel free to have your camera off. There will be, as you might have seen in the program, lots of different formats and sessions throughout the 2 hours that we're looking at now. So throughout the webinar, we invite you to put your questions, of course, anytime in the chat. But there will also be some moments where we really invite you to, actively engage in the discussion and to unmute and take the floor and share your thoughts and experiences and ideas. This is what it's all about. It's about learning from each other. It's about looking what we can do together. So yeah, please do not feel shy. Feel free to, speak up and ask any questions you might have. Also, I would ask you a final thing to maybe, if possible, rename yourself just so we know who is in the room, with your full name, organization, and also the location you're coming from, just so we can know who's there. And yeah, I think with this, I'm handing over to Andrew.
Wonderful. Thank you, Michelle. Good morning, everybody, and really a warm welcome for today's knowledge sharing workshop on cultural relations, climate change and environment. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to join us. For those I've not met, my name is Andrew Manning, and I'm the director of EUNIC here in Brussels. So our session today has been proposed and developed by several of our members, by the Institut Français, by the British Council, DutchCulture, and the Danish Cultural Institute, in close collaboration with us here at EUNIC. So really thank you to all colleagues and members involved, and not least to Michelle in our own team. This week's workshop, which actually features both today's online session, but also a live component tomorrow and Thursday, is definitely an important step for us in mainstreaming and advancing our own commitment to cultural relations and climate action within the context of our shared network as EUNIC. By way of setting the scene, I did just want to shortly give a couple of little reminders about some of the milestones that we've had on our sustainability journey as a network. So many of you might know that the summer before last, we convened a week-long lab in Berlin dedicated to cultural relations and climate action. And for us, through this program, it was a chance to have a completely open call to our members to find and identify those emerging leaders who have a real personal and professional commitment to climate action, and to give them a platform to connect, but also to gain professional development on the topic and to strengthen their individual and collective capacities to lead change on the topic. When we emerged from Berlin, we issued an open call for a commission, which was aiming to develop practical tools, which are really targeted explicitly for you as cultural relations actors. And this was a way to deepen the opportunities and to structure a few of those big questions that our members were asking themselves. So these were questions such as, how can our network take collective action and mainstream climate action as a community of practice of cultural relations practitioners? We wanted to look at what role our members can play in continuing to enable those creative climate movement actors around the world. And we also wanted to look specifically at what key advocacy moments could be where culture and cultural relations need to be more present in the post-2030 development agenda. So we're really delighted that we'll be able to hear more about these tools directly from the authors, and we thank both of them for also joining us today. As a network, we really do have other levels of leverage which we try to put at the service of climate action. So we have concentrated moments where we can engage the leadership of all of your organizations. And so I just want to collectively remind ourselves that the topic of climate action is now regularly programmed within our General Assemblies, which convene the senior management of all of our members. And of course, as 39 institutes for culture across all EU member states, Ukraine and UK, this is a potentially extremely influential group of governmental and non-governmental actors. For us also, the external partnership role of all of our members around the world is another key leverage, because this is where on the ground you and we are interacting with these key artistic and civil society actors. And as a network, we have 140 clusters in over 100 countries. So again, another huge potential to really support the creative climate movement. Looking today, we hope we can offer this space to share a bit of knowledge, inspiration, and expertise amongst you, our members, and also support you with tools and reflections to recalibrate your own next steps on climate action and embedding sustainability within cultural relations. Just to close my introduction, I just wanted to remind any of you who are not familiar that our knowledge sharing workshops are an ongoing regular series within EUNIC, and the topics always emerge from the proposals of you, the members. They're pitched at our general assemblies, and then from there, we collaboratively develop a program as a live or online workshop. And we had our last online one just a few weeks ago on the cultural relations, on the cultural rights-based approach to cultural relations, and we also had 2 previous on different approaches to decolonizing cultural relations. I will stop there and just suffice to say again a huge thank you to all involved and especially to the participants for coming, and I'll hand over to our colleague Rosanna Lewis of the British Council to begin our session. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and we're delighted to have you with us today. This EUNIC knowledge sharing workshop on climate action and sustainability and the environment has really come about because we really value and see the role that EUNIC and its members can play in fighting and tackling the climate emergency. It's a topic that's really emerged as a priority across the cultural sector, but also around the world, as we're facing more and more challenges and emergencies. With the global footprint that we have around the world, there's a real opportunity to come together and find ways to take climate action, and whether that be at the internal institutional level, national level, through our European collaborations, and also our international cooperation and international cultural relations. So it's a great opportunity through EUNIC to come together and look at how we understand our own strategies and programs, but also how we can influence our institutions, EUNIC as a network, and our global partnerships, and look at how we can advocate for climate action and sustainability across the cultural sector and in international cultural relations. So we're delighted to bring everyone together online today, but also in Paris in the next couple of days. That's kind of where this came about, and Simon and I, as the focal points for EUNIC, took part in the Berlin workshop last year. We came together as co-leads for this knowledge sharing workshop with Institut Français and Danish Cultural Institute, because we all see this as a key topic that EUNIC could be speaking about a lot more. And we're so excited to see how much progress has been made up until now. In Berlin, we came up with the metaphor of a tree as to how the trunk of EUNIC and its members could be part of our strategy, the branches going out into how our programs and projects can happen, and then feeding back into EUNIC. So I'm just going to hand over to Simon to share with you this tree metaphor that we'd love to take forward through this workshop, but also beyond. And he'll explain a bit more the origin and present that to you now.
Thank you so much, Rosanna. Indeed, we have found this metaphor of a tree very useful in describing and mapping out the ecosystem that we are in as a network, I think, and it helps to also spark the imagination a little bit about the types of touch points that we all have with the topic of climate action and cultural relations, which I think are very diverse and very different. I think even for the many participants joining us online, there's headquarter touch points to the topic, the strategic level, the internal organizations, and there's people also joining us from clusters who have been leading projects dealing with climate action. So we took this this tree analogy further into designing our knowledge sharing workshop currently during the online session, and as well what we will do in Paris. I will just briefly show what I'm speaking about when I'm speaking about this tree, to zoom in on how we view this topic systemically, both within EUNIC Global as a network, but also within our own organizations. This can really be a helpful way of thinking about our engagement with climate action. So when you see here that the roots are the systems and drivers of cultural relations that can nourish or damage the tree, you can see that the trunk is the core of the tree and symbolizes founding principles and a vision for the whole. This can be expressed, for example, in multi-annual strategies of our different members, as well as, for example, the declaration that followed right after our Berlin lab, which was a commitment to net zero policies by our members. The branches are already a little bit more into the organizational fabric of organizations, representing programs, strategies, internal education for staff, for example. We are interested in all of these parts of the tree, I think, because they reflect how we are progressing in different ways and what are perceived challenges at each of these different parts. And the leaves, to round up, the leaves are the cultural relation projects that blossom and stem from the whole, as we describe it. So they are the projects that take place on the ground. They are the touch points with the creative climate community around the world, where we learn also from this creative climate community what are opportunities, where are new developments taking place, and who is involved in it. So moving from this one page of our lab publication, I created this Miro board, which we won't go into too much depth during our online workshop, but it will be the place where I and my colleagues as co-hosts will be skipping up and down the tree as squirrels or smaller insects, perhaps, to scribble down whatever has been said during the workshop about projects, around programs, around strategy. There's here some place which features education, training, and empowering, in which we will talk about the EUNIC sustainability toolkit, and this will be leading us beyond the tree, in fact, into the wider ecosystem, to the days ahead of us, which really will focus on what have we learned from the many different projects that we've gathered from our network around the area of impact and storytelling, and also key, as Andrew also alluded to, what are those key global moments for us to come together as network or as groups of heads to present our projects, present the impact of the work that we do, and what are the main storytelling and impact measurement devices that we need in those different places. So this will be part of our Thursday activities in Paris, to really map out what are moments ahead of us that we need to come together for. Advocacy, as you can see, the tree exists in the ecosystem, so everything that's metabolized back into the soil, the falling leaves, are going, in our analogy, expressed as political and policy support, coming back to the tree roots as mandates, and then into our strategies again. So this story is hopefully never ending, just like a good ecological cycle. Without further ado, I would like to pass on the word to our experts. Or shall I go back to you, Michelle, first for a quick introduction?
Yeah, sure. I mean, thanks, Simon. Thanks, Rosanna, for all the recap also of Berlin and everything that came since. And yeah, I think one of the clear outcomes that we left Berlin with after this long week of training and exchanges was that really we needed some more research and insights, especially geared towards the EUNIC network, because cultural relations is a bit of a specific field. So we took this quite serious, and then in autumn 2023, we commissioned, through an open call, 2 experts that I'm very happy and glad to be able to announce today, who joined us to share a little bit more on the research. But so following the Berlin week, we were then in the good position of publishing what we call the EUNIC Sustainability Toolkit. Some of you might have seen it, which is really a follow-up based on the knowledge we had before, really geared towards our network to look into more detail into questions of climate action and cultural relations. But yeah, who am I to speak about it if we have the two authors here? So Elena and Eva, I gladly pass on to you.
Thanks, Michelle. Hi, everyone. It's nice to be here. Thank you for having us. So I'm gonna start with our presentation. Let's see if it works. Oops. Too many buttons. All right. Can you see us? Yes. So my name is Maria Elena. I'm a communications and campaign strategist. I've been working in the environmental field for over 10 years, also in the cultural field before, and I worked for many years as a global communications and campaign strategist for international organizations like Greenpeace and others. And in 2021, I founded We Move Waves, which is a consultancy trying to bridge the gap between environmental sustainability, social impact, and also the arts and culture. So this is what I've been trying to do for the past few years. So I was very glad to work on the toolkit. And then Eva, maybe you also want to introduce yourself a bit.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for the invitation. I'm Eva Balaban, and I'm a sustainability consultant. I'm also environmental assessor for A Greener Future. This is an NGO based in London that helps organizations become more sustainable. And I'm also the sustainability coordinator of Rock im Park Festival in Germany. Now back to you, Marilena.
Thank you, Eva. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead with our presentation today, which is not moving. All right. So, oops, why this project? So as Angie already mentioned it briefly, we responded to this open call by EUNIC in the winter of 2023. And we developed this toolkit in response to a few questions that have been asked. Basically, how climate action could be promoted within the cultural relations community, but also among all the criteria that could be identified, what were the ones that would be relevant to the work of cultural institutes, how culture should be, the role of culture should be allied in the post-23 development agenda, but also within the global climate movement. And at the same time, how cultural institutes can actually reinforce the work that a lot of other organizations and activists are doing within the climate movement. Our work was based basically on the insights from the Berlin Climate Culture Lab. And so we integrated the values that have been identified by EUNIC members there of inclusivity, but also fun and solidarity. And plus, we also integrated elements of hope-based communications because a lot of the conversation, a lot of discourse around climate change is focused on the doom and gloom and of course, the urgency, but also a lot of things are not working. But we believe that it's very important also to highlight the positive and give hope to people, because otherwise focusing on doom can be pretty discouraging. So we conducted a needs assessment and research also within the network that Eva will touch upon later. And we developed this toolkit, which is composed of a set of external resources and of internal resources as well. So the external resources are available for everyone, and they are the frequently asked questions, which are basically a series of potential questions that both the public and the media might ask to people working for cultural institutes. For example, why cultural institutes should be involved, how is culture relevant to the work of to environmental action, and so on. Of course, we believe that culture is uniquely placed, and so cultural institutes are uniquely placed, especially in this moment, to take on climate and environmental action, because culture can shape, of course, the values and the narratives within a society, and so it's very important that it's also part of the conversation. Another tool was the how to get engaged, so giving a few ideas on how to integrate sustainability into the work and operations of cultural institutes. Then there is the communications toolkit, which I will talk about a little bit. We identified some KPIs, some key performance indicators that can be relevant for cultural relations institutes to track their progress. And then there is a glossary of terms because oftentimes the wording can be a bit confusing. So it's good to have an agreement on the usage of certain language so that the messaging can be consistent throughout the communications of the different institutes. We also prepared a set of internal resources, which can be considered as living documents that can be constantly updated. We conducted research, surveys, and interviews within the network, and also highlighted some case studies highlighting what worked and what could be improved. But also we identified some key advocacy moments and initiative in the outside world, which might be relevant for the network to identify where and when and why it's important maybe to develop some partnerships or collaborations and try to take some space and be more present in these external moments. We identified some key actors in the climate space. Of course, there are a lot, so the list cannot be exhaustive, but we try to identify the main ones and also the ones that might be more open to also develop collaborations and partnerships with arts and cultural institutes. And we also collected existing resources related to culture and environmental action that could be relevant for everyone. We placed quite a lot of importance on the comms storytelling toolkit. Why is that? Because communicating about climate change can be really hard. We're talking to different audiences. We're talking to people who have different levels of knowledge, different values, different interests. So we try to develop these guidelines so that we wanted to make them as useful as possible. We identified some objectives that cultural institutes could have when defining the type of actions that they are going to take on climate. Some potential entry points, meaning what are the values that we can appeal to? As I said, different audiences have different values, but we can try to find the values that we share with those audiences, to find a common place and try to push the narrative of why it's important to act on environmental issues. We also thought it was really important to highlight that when we talk about climate actions, it's not just about climate. Climate is just one issue within the broader environmental issues that we are facing, and they are all interconnected. But also, when we talk about environmental issues, we need to consider intersectionality, meaning that it's not just about the environment, it's also about gender, it's also about class differences, it's also about how the society, how different problems within the societies interconnect and also reflect on environmental issues. It's also about climate justice, meaning that oftentimes the people that are less responsible for environmental disaster are actually the ones that are suffering it the most. So we thought that it's very important to acknowledge that. We also suggested in some ways to communicate about these issues because it can be quite tricky and sensitive. And so following some principles of inclusivity and accessibility, we suggested some do's and don'ts, some ways of communicating, and some that will be better be avoided. And then we suggested a series of questions in our vision and mission part that are questions for the network, for institutes, that I invite you all to reflect on when you want to apply the toolkit, which are related to what are the type of values that we want to put out there, what are our key messages, the main points that we want to convey when we talk about environmental issues in our initiatives, what is the type of actions, key actions that we want to take. So these are actions that, these are questions that hopefully can guide the development of a communications and campaign strategy when trying to include climate action in your initiatives. And then, as mentioned before, there is also like a short glossary that is available to everyone with the most used climate-related terminology and the potential questions from the media and the public. Moving on, aware of time, these are some insights that we related to the communications campaigns and some initiatives that have been already taken on by institutes that we identified when interviewing practitioners within the network. So what we saw is that, of course, the initiatives that were most successful were the ones that were tailored to specific audiences, because of course there is not a one solution fits all. So we always need to be aware of the audience we're talking to when developing a campaign, a communication campaigns. There were different initiatives that were integrated into events, cultural festivals, leisure activities to promote the climate education. And there was a lot of success with initiatives that involved the youth, which usually are already more open to listen to certain narratives and probably already taking action. Social media worked pretty well when trying to engage communities and amplifying certain messages. And of course, the type of communications that was most effective was the one where the language was accessible, easy to understand. So the data were also backed by stories. So stories that could actually tap into people's emotions, because we know that just data are not enough to convince people. And also visuals, because when we provide visuals that are also easy to understand, they can be more impactful and they can help us reach to broader audiences. Some challenges that we identified that are actually quite common, not only for cultural practitioners when talking about climate communications, is of course the complexity of the theme. It's difficult to explain the causes, the impacts, and also the solutions. Although it's always important, I think, to not only talk about the problem, but also explain that solutions already exist and they can be implemented. This is also reasons for hope that actually moves people to take action and don't make them feel completely powerless. Another issue was the skepticism, because of course there are a lot of, depending on the audience, there are sometimes doubts and related to climate change, and there are different priorities within different communities that we try to reach out to. It's also difficult to be accessible and to include that, to make sure that different points of views are included in the communications. But it was recognized that there is the role of arts for awareness is becoming stronger and stronger. Personally, I see that also within the environmental movement itself. A lot of NGOs and organizations are increasingly more open to look for different ways of communicating about environmental issues. What happens oftentimes is that the people in the environmental organizations end up talking to themselves. And so a lot of us are actually open to working with artists, with cultural institutions, because we know of the power they have to also to reach to different audiences. And some additional insights is that, of course, as mentioned before, there is not a one solution fits all. So whenever you work on a communications or campaign strategy, you always need to adapt it to the local context and speak to the people who are actually working on the ground. Collaboration is important, being aware of what other organizations are doing. So we don't need to reinvent the wheel all the time, but we can combine our efforts together to be more powerful. And yes, there is more and more interest in innovative approaches like art exhibition, digital arts. So to find a way to communicate about environmental issues in a different way. So these are, I'm aware it's a lot of information, but yes, this is in brief what we try to do, especially from the communications point of view. And then I'll leave the floor to Eva to go for the next parts of the presentation.
Thank you, Maria Elena. So I will talk about the KPIs. This deliverable provides a practical framework for cultural institutes to integrate sustainability into their operations, programming, and partnership. And so KPIs, or key performance indicators, are measurable values that help organizations, in this case cultural institutes, to track progress, to assess their sustainability performance and identify areas for improvement. They can provide a structured way to monitor environmental, social, and economic impact. But why KPIs matter? Well, they could provide clarity and focus and can help organizations prioritize key sustainability goals. They can provide a baseline to track progress. They could guide resource allocation and strategy development, and they can ensure that all stakeholders are committed to the sustainability efforts. So the key takeaways from the deliverable is that KPIs should be smart, and we all know that that means specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Data should be collected regularly and reviewed to identify trends and areas for action, and the sustainability strategy should be adjusted accordingly. Institutes can implement different levels of KPIs depending on their sustainability experience. And we have suggested, but these suggestions are not prescriptive. It is important to highlight that. So we've suggested different KPIs depending on where your institute is in your sustainability journey. So we've suggested KPIs for institutes who are starting in their sustainability journey and for some who are already advanced. And it's also important to benchmark against industry standards to help measure effectiveness. And also to combine quantitative data with qualitative feedback, which improves decision making. So we've suggested some data collection methods, some reporting tools, and also that it is important to ensure that all staff understands how to collect the data and how to use KPIs effectively. And we've also suggested some KPIs depending on the categories. For example, some KPIs to measure operational sustainability, to measure engagement and awareness, to measure sustainability in programming and partnership, social sustainability, inclusion, etc., etc. So yeah, I really recommend, if you haven't had a look at the deliverable, I really recommend that you have a look at it, and hopefully you get inspired to introduce some KPIs that are the right one for your organization. Next slide, please. Okay. So the next document I'm going to talk about is about engagement, how to get engaged. And this document is designed to inspire EUNIC members to embed sustainability in cultural practices while making it engaging, inclusive, and impactful. This deliverable provides practical strategies for engaging stakeholders in sustainability efforts within cultural institutes. And we've tried for all the deliverables to be really as practical as possible. So the key takeaways here are to simplify sustainability and engage through practical toolkits, gamified actions, and structured initiatives, to foster engagement through creativity, inclusion, and visibility, to encourage collaboration by establishing networks, mentorships, and challenges, and to communicate impact using storytelling, social media, and recognition programs. So basically, by making sustainability easy, fun, by encouraging a sense of community and achievement, and incorporating sustainability as part of the DNA of the organization, making it part of the culture, you can achieve to get people more engaged. Next slide. So I'm going to talk now briefly about the research that we've conducted, which consisted of a survey and also interviews. So we sent out, you probably know that already, we sent out a survey to the network members, and we had 74 participants globally, which provide very valuable data. And we also conducted interviews with 8 participants from institutes that are already advanced in sustainability initiatives. Next slide, please. So briefly touching upon some results from the survey, we identified some current engagement, current level of engagement in climate action. So most organizations are engaged in climate action, but only a few are leading initiatives. Next slide, please. And no surprise, one of the biggest barriers for more engagement in climate action are financial constraints, but also stakeholder engagement. So yeah, we developed a document for that. And also lack of knowledge, resources, and strategic alignment. Other collaboration challenges that were identified were different priorities among members, ineffective communication, and limited capacity. Next slide, please. So some of the suggested improvements were, well, more funding, more dedicated funding in climate-focused grants, training, webinars, toolkits, and capacity building programs, the need for guidelines, setting clear objectives, implementing impact, measurement tools, well, KPIs, and case studies, and also a stronger communication, and improved internal communication, networking, and storytelling for climate action. Next slide, please. So regarding KPIs and measuring progress in sustainability, only 23 out of the 74 organizations who participated are tracking climate progress. And those metrics that, the common metrics include carbon footprint, waste reduction, and sustainability reporting. Next slide, please. So regarding the interviews, we identified, or it was mentioned that there was a lack of engagement and follow-up, like high-level engagement from audiences and network members on sustainability initiatives is limited, that there were some communication gaps because many members are unaware of EUNIC's available resources and tools, but also lack an overview of sustainability initiatives implemented by other members. There were time and resource constraints. It was mentioned that members struggled to prioritize climate action due to other institutional commitments, and also that there were diverse priorities because sustainability approaches vary widely, making network-wide alignment difficult. And also it was mentioned that identifying relevant KPIs was challenging. Next slide, please. Regarding the needs of the network, well, a centralized online platform providing easy access to sustainability guidelines was outlined as a need, also containing best practices, case studies, and tools tailored for cultural institutes. Also, participants wished for regular webinars and training sessions to introduce and explore sustainability tools, helping institutions understand and integrate them effectively. Other needs that were identified were strategies to promote awareness and encourage long-term behavior shift within cultural organizations, fostering a culture of responsibility and engagement, and also hands-on guidance, mentorship, and peer support to help institutions develop and implement concrete sustainability projects. And last but not least, the participant mentioned the need for a structured, standardized approach to defining, tracking, and measuring sustainability objectives, ensuring consistency and comparability across organizations. Next slide, please. Regarding the opportunities and recommendations, participants suggested creating a list of mandatory sustainability standards for EUNIC projects, to regularly publish sustainability best practices in newsletters, to encourage knowledge exchange among EUNIC clusters, and to ensure climate action is embedded in project funding criteria. They also mentioned to use COP and EU frameworks to align climate actions with broader policies. And now we have prepared some questions.
Yes. Yes,
Robert?
back to Michelle. Yeah.
You can help us here.
So just maybe for a word of explanation. So thank you very much again, Marlena and Eva, for this presentation. And I think this is a moment where you wanted to hear also from participants, right, to get a little bit more input than here. So I'm just putting a link in the chat, but you can also go on slido.com and enter this code. You can also use just the link here and then answer. We have prepared a few questions. In the meantime, I see one question by Fusun.
Oh, yes. Now I'm not unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes, very well.
Yes, thank you. thank you for inspiration and great what you call sharing all this knowledge and research. I don't have a question. I just have a few comments. First of all, I love this idea of climate justice because I work at the Danish Cultural Institute as country manager for Turkey. And this cultural injustice has been, big part of many people's reality. So that's it. But I also, we all want to do a difference. We know it's important. But for example, like today or yesterday, I read a report from Denmark that when the cultural institutions, like organizations, have been dealing with economical problems, the first thing they cut down is this climate engagement. I mean, film business, architecture, theater, performance. I just read, I will find it out and report that the first place they cut down is that, because still in developed countries like Denmark, it's great to have, but it doesn't come as the first priority. And maybe I was thinking that when we say climate urgency, that to some minds, it makes it a little bit stressful. We all know it's urgent, but how to communicate, how to react, how to do in a different way. I have these questions all the time in my mind, and I'm also part of our green team at Danish Cultural Institute. So just some thoughts from me. So thanks for listening.
Thank you very much also for sharing and raising these important questions. I think that many of us are asking ourselves, which we're glad to also take into the discussions further in the next 2 days in Paris in person. I'm seeing a little bit of movement on the slide, or maybe we can just share a bit of the results, and then conscious of time also looking at the next block then. So I see 10 colleagues answering. We'll keep the link open so you can also still vote during the next, but it's good news, I'd say. 77%.
It's great to see that. Thank you so much.
Kids. It's creeping up now, so let's maybe look at the next question before we see a 50-50.
Well, at least it's good to know that we've awakened some interest.
Absolutely, for sure. And yes, also just a reminder, I mean, I put the link of the toolkit in the chat, and if you haven't had a look yet at all these different tools, we really can only warmly invite you to look and to really include them in your work, because again, there is something for everyone, no matter where you are in your sustainability journey, addressing lots of different target audiences as well. So we personally also in our EUNIC office try to use it more and more now, also for our internal organizations, and it's really, we found it very helpful, and I know some colleagues in the room have also already started looking at it. So yeah, conscious of time, shall we maybe do one last question and then turn to the next slot? And Elena, Eva, I know that you'll still be with us for the closing of the webinar, so maybe we'll have some more time for questions then as well. It's on the radar. That's definitely the good news of the day. And also, of course, here, but if the toolkit has inspired some new ideas and actions, please do share it in the chat. We'll be happy to collect it on the tree and to look into it into more detail, because this is, of course, also very interesting to know for us what has sparked your ideas and where the toolkit had led you. Great. So yeah, thank you very much. And I think with this, Simon, turning to you now.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Elena and Eva, for giving these important prompts to us, I think, to continue exploring the toolkit and to continue exploring everything that you've addressed. And also thank you to the questions raised in the chat. And thank you for highlighting some of the important points that I hope we will be able to cover in our next little blog. I can tell you in the meantime, I've been busy in the tree. I've been hopping up and down to see where the different comments fit and also can be taken on board in our later live workshopping that will happen in Paris. Fuzun, I think it's very important, the thing that you mentioned around urgency, which comes down to communicating about the work that you do in climate and cultural relations. An important part of storytelling about our projects, I think, is key to see how we have to move maybe also at times from a narrative of urgency to a narrative of action and community. And then to the point of organizations and how far they are, we've seen it reflected in the small polls that we just that you just made. How far are organizations in taking steps towards climate action? Has a toolkit been an inspiration for organizations? No better the thing to do, I think, than to ask some of our colleagues at different organizations to highlight some of the work that they've been doing on climate action within their headquarter levels. So the next block for the next hour or so, we will speak to colleagues from the EUNIC network to talk about their efforts in climate action and cultural relations. Firstly, I would like to invite some colleagues to speak on the progress that they've been making and the projects that they've been working on from the headquarter perspective. So from the headquarter perspective, a different type of engagement with climate action, I think, exists. And then later on, we will also speak to two colleagues who have been involved in a cluster fund project with a specific climate oriented project, which is also very interesting and offers us a lot of look into projects that have finished only quite recently and also have found an extension into a next round of cluster fund funding. So very much looking forward to that. But first of all, since we are gathering in Paris, and I'm already taking the train this afternoon to go to Paris, we would like to include a French perspective on the topic from the perspective of the Institut Français headquartered in Paris. We've invited Lucie to come and join us, Lucie Vivier Colico, who's the project manager at the French pavilion in the Venezia Biennale of Venezia. And she's here to speak a little bit about how the strategy towards net zero from the Institut Français also translates in a very concrete way in the production of the French pavilion. So without further ado, I would love to invite Lucie to share some of the project and the progress that she's been working on. Lucie,
Yes, thank you very much, Simon, for this introduction. I'm very happy to meet you all virtually for this passionate webinar about climate and ecological transition in art. And I'm also looking forward to meet some of you in Paris tomorrow and on Thursday. So I'm here to speak to talk about the low carbon strategy of the French pavilion in Venice, that I believe it's one of the leaves of the tree, if I understood you correctly, Simon. And I'm now sharing my screen. Can you all see my screen? Okay, perfect. So a little bit of context about this low carbon strategy. So the French pavilion at the International Exhibition of Art and Architecture is produced and commissioned by the Institut Français, operator of the Ministry for Europe and Foreign Affairs and the Ministry of Culture. The production of the exhibition have a big environmental impact on the scale of the French pavilion, but above all on the scale of La Biennale, besides having negative effects on the city of Venice. So the question we start in 2022 was, what can we do to have a more sustainable and responsible way of making exhibition? L'Institut Français has adopted in 2022 a general roadmap for her sustainable journey based on 3 general goals. 1 being responsible, 2 being an accelerator of the transition, and 3 being a key voice. And one of the 10 goals of the roadmap is to measure the carbon footprint of the French pavilion in Venice and define an action plan to reduce its carbon footprint by at least 25% by 2026. So the first step to do so was being assisted by an expert because we are not very skilled in our institution, to do this work. And we first called on the expertise of ADNA, an agency specializing in helping cultural players with their ecological transition. And we are also working with Arter, which is the executive producer of the French pavilion exhibitions, and they are based in Venice, and they are very advanced in environmental principle and in particular in eco-design. The second step was to calculate our carbon footprint of our exhibition to identify the most significant greenhouse gas emission in our exhibition. So the general framework of the carbon footprint and the different items we calculate are the services, the building energy, the production aspect, the production of the catalog of the exhibition, its prints and its transport, digital communication, and travel, accommodation, and meal, and especially travel. That's why I just put accommodation and meal in a second level. So this is a picture of an extension view of the Biennale in 2022 in our French pavilion. So first we identified that for this edition in 2022, the most significant greenhouse gas emission was the building energy, the making of the catalog and its transports, and of course the travel, which represent 40% of the total carbon footprint. That was in total 110 tons of greenhouse gas emission. So this is the installation view of the edition in 2023. And for this edition, which were in general 97 tons of greenhouse gas emission, the most significant item was the production parts, and still and always that will be the travel, which represent 50% of the carbon footprint in total. So then when we calculate the carbon footprint, the third step was taking measures to reduce this impact, and I precise that this is still an ongoing process and an ongoing step because we're always learning from our experience from the last editions and still try to improve our action. So this is most of our guidelines. I'm not going to read all of them, but just to highlight some. For instance, it was also to identify a person in the project team who will be the responsible for this sustainability journey. For instance, in eco-design, we try, for instance, to favor standard sizes over aesthetic, also anticipates the most end of life from the design stage. In production aspect, we try to work with local suppliers in Venice and to build the scenography of the exhibition locally and not transport any material from out of the region of the Veneto. We also rent video and sound devices rather than buy them. If we're programming some performances in the French pavilion, we hire local performers, and also we try to have like really strict flight policy about freight. Yeah. And also about the building, because you see that it was also a very important item in terms of gas emission. We as Français have the chance to undergo renovation work this year, and the pavilion will be closed. And we have taken this opportunity to explore ways to make the building more sustainable. And so in 2022, we conducted a technical study on the building energy performance, and insight and the recommendation from this study have been incorporated in the general renovation plans. That includes, for instance, insulating the glass roofs and installing double glazing, adding permanent solar protection, also replacing the reversible air conditioning and stuff. And we hope that it will help to have less impacts about our building energy in terms of electricity, especially. So the first step was sharing knowledge, as Maria, Elena, and Eva said, to put in common our initiative and try to be more powerful collectively. So L'Institut Français is part of the Global Green Lion in Venice. That is an initiative of the International Art and Architecture Exhibition Commissioner, which incorporates sustainability principle in its exhibition's design. And we try to participate actively into the dialogue with the group of commissioners to develop this collective dynamic. And also we try as much as possible to take part in different conferences, conversation, workshop to a various audience to talk about our initiative, but also learn constantly from the other experiences. So the conclusion of my intervention would be that this trajectory is unlikely to be linear. Each artistic project is unique, and the specific needs of the artist have varying impacts that cannot always be limited. Some projects may result in higher carbon emission due to factors such as the artist's background, budget, or the nature of the project itself. And one of the main challenges we are facing is the air travel, which represent always the largest share of the greenhouse gas emission. And we really want to make progress on this issue and are considering more restrictive measures to enhance our responsibility regarding this challenge. And while we don't have the definitive solution yet, we are thinking of working with an expert to explore viable ways to address it. I'm very curious also about your own initiative and progress on that. Thank you very much.
Indeed, merci, Lucille. Thank you so much for a wonderful demonstration of how you can apply these ambitions to one concrete project, a big project. And I'm really looking forward also to learn more from Institut Français perspective on how this, for example, already has maybe an effect on different programs that you organized. Like you said, I'm really curious also to learn from everyone here in the room on similar types of initiatives. How have net zero ambitions come concretely to exist in both in projects but also in internal organizations? I'm really curious about, for example, DutchCulture's energy mix and emissions mix. When you say 40% of it goes to mobility, and travel. I think that's really considerable, and I think something similar will be the percentage also for our organization. So thank you so much for taking us on this journey to Venice. I would love to hand over the words to our next speaker, who represents our German member IFA, Institute für Auslandbeziehungen, who has been a part of the Green workshop on their Green events workshop in their team. Is our colleague from calling in from Stuttgart, Mara Kirchmann, who is right here, who will take us on a few of the pointers strategically, where how IFA has gone about implementing change towards net zero policies, and some concrete ways in which that also finds its way in events. Mara, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you, Simon, for this very nice introduction. I hope everyone can hear me. Yes, okay. Hi, nice to see you, everyone. I will start by tackling the hardest task for today by sharing my screen. Just a second. So can you see the presentation by now? No, you can't. Maybe now?
It's coming.
It's coming. Okay, that's good. Okay, wait a second. Is there anything you can see so far? You can just nod.
That's
Or
perfect.
shake your head.
Yeah.
Okay, that's perfect. Okay, thank you. So, hi. Nice to see you. And I would like to talk with you about the sustainability strategy at IFA, so the Institution for International Cultural Relations, based in Stuttgart and Berlin. And I want to keep it short and simple to be able to stick to the tight schedule for today. And the first question we asked ourselves was, why do we do this? Why do we deal with sustainability in our work? And this is basically not really a question, because the answer is simply there is no future without it. So we are convinced that cultural relations like IFA or everyone in this room has also kind of a model role, or our role models for the societies we want to have an impact in. So that's why we wanted to deal with sustainability at IFA. And the second question we asked ourselves is, how do we understand sustainability or climate action? And we see it as a part of a wider sustainability strategy that includes ecological, social, and economic aspects. So this is why we adopted the definition of sustainability according to the United Nations Brundtland Commission, where sustainability is defined as meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And based on this definition, the implementation of the IFA sustainability strategy is currently based on 5 pillars. So first, we included it in our strategic framework to put it on a strategic level. So we put it in our strategic framework that we agreed upon with the German Federal Foreign Office and which guides our sustainability efforts. The second pillar is certification. So within this strategic framework, IFA set itself the goal of achieving a sustainability certification. And after assessing several sustainability certifications, because there are a lot, IFA chose the economy for the common good. And its corresponding balance sheet, the so-called common good matrix. I will talk about this later. The common good matrix not only encompasses sustainability in regard to ecological aspects, but also includes the aspects of social and economic sustainability. So it fits perfectly to the definition we chose for IFA. And yes, this common good matrix will also serve as a guideline for furthering sustainability at IFA. The third pillar is codifying sustainability guidelines, which also corresponds to the communication toolkit we have heard earlier on. So part of IFA's sustainability strategy is to codify sustainability guidelines for our work. For example, last year, we introduced a guideline for sustainable events at IFA. So we asked ourselves, how can we organize events in a more sustainable way? Pillar number 4 is raising employee awareness. So in addition to the guidelines, we need the general awareness of all of our colleagues for sustainable topics. And we used nudges such as stickers and posts on our internal communication system in order to try to guide their attention to topics like saving energy and water within our buildings. And this ties also to the communication toolkit of the EUNIC sustainability toolkit. And the 5th pillar is partner and memberships, because we are convinced that long-lasting sustainable transformation cannot be achieved alone. So this is why IFA seeks to join forces with other organizations. For example, last year, we became member of the Aktionsnetzwerk Nachhaltigkeit, which is roughly translated into Network of Action for Sustainability. And in this network, cultural institutions in Germany share best practices in regard to sustainability, and this pillar also ties to the partnerships and collaborations as part of the toolkit. Here you can see the common good matrix I mentioned, and which not only encompasses sustainability in regard to ecological aspects, but also in regards of social and economic sustainability. And we will use it as a first step for an analysis of the current situation. So where do we stand as IFA in terms of sustainability, and which areas of work do we need to prioritize in the future in order to become more sustainable, with the long-term goal on the horizon of the sustainability certification. Exactly. Thank you for your attention.
And thank you, Mara. Danke. I think a really neat and great holistic overview of the way you've been approaching the topic so far. I'm very keen to learn more, and maybe we have some questions after our final speaker in this little block that we can address. But also, please feel free in the chat to already scribble down thoughts or responses to the prompts that Rosanna is sharing in the chat. Things that you share or resources that you share, just like the ones that you shared, Mara, we will carefully note down and find a place for them on the tree, whether that's strategy, programs, education, but also something that you mentioned, I think is very important, that we are inspired by partners and pathfinders in the larger field of creative climate action. For EUNIC Global itself, that was also very importantly and strongly done by our partners at Julie's Bicycle, who are guiding sessions during the Berlin week, as well as, of course, our 2 experts guiding us here today. So I think acknowledging that we are there and guided and led by different expertises and pathfinders, as we call them, is I think key to mention. So I included a little section of the Miro board to highlight those organizations too. Speaking about Julie's Bicycle, we're speaking about a British organization that works closely together with our colleagues of the British Council, and I'm very pleased to be joined today also by Nikki Lok, who is here with us. She is a senior relationship manager at the British Council, leading also on the program Cultural Response to Global Challenges. Well, we went back and forth a little bit over the email to speak about the exact angle for this. We're zooming a little bit, or we're moving a little bit upwards in the tree towards the design of programs and how, for example, partnerships and thinking about programs strategically also has many different implications when it comes to this particular topic. So how is the British Council responding as a global organization through its organizational strategy, but also its programming? And I would love to give the floor to you, Nikki, to take us there in a short amount of time, I realize.
Thank you so much, Simon. It's so lovely to be here with you all, and really, really incredible to listen to everybody's different contributions and about the sustainability toolkit. Congratulations to everybody. And there's so much that I've learned already. So I'm going to be talking today about the British Council's work. So there's two elements to this, really: our wider organisational strategy, and then because of the area I work in, which is around arts and culture, I'll talk to you a little bit about how we're kind of looking at our programming around this. And we really recognise, obviously, as does everybody, this doesn't really need repeating, that we, you know, this is one of the biggest challenges we're facing as a world. And obviously the impacts are really going to set into intensify over the next decade and beyond. And, you know, it will really kind of look at the resilience of our society and also everybody that we work with and how we operate as an organisation. So, you know, we've worked in this area for quite some time already, but actually during October last year, we actually launched our organisational strategy, so a 2-year strategy to 2026. And I'm just trying to share my screen now. Let's have a look. Can you see that? Can everybody see that? Fantastic, great. Okay, I never know if tech's going to work. Okay, so yes, we launched our climate change strategy in October 2024 last year. And at the moment, we're looking at this as a 2-year, just towards 2026. Doesn't mean we'll be stopping there. It's just so we can actually update and we can look at kind of the progress that we've made. Funding and resources become clearer and that kind of thing. And it builds on what we've really already done, what we've learned and what we've delivered through a programme which we call the Climate Connection. It's about our response to the climate crisis as an organisation through the arts and culture, education and English language, and also outlines how we'll continue to meet our commitment to being an environmentally responsible organisation. And this is really, really great to have. You know, it brings everything together, it shows our commitment, and it also helps us to think about how we can really make best use of our global presence, our wider reach and networks, which kind of really places us in a good position to make a difference. It includes our objectives for our climate work in our areas of cultural engagement, which I've just outlined, and our response to meet our net zero ambition by 2040. And we also have some key performance indicators as well. I'll actually share a link to this afterwards because a couple of moments is not enough time to talk you through all of this. But our ambitions really, you know, we really want to strengthen our global connections and partnerships with the UK and worldwide. And in particular, we also want to ensure there's representation from those who are most at risk and feeling the impacts of climate change, including women and girls, young people, and people with disabilities. And it's led by our wonderful colleagues, Elena, who's our Global Head of Environment, and also Monamita Nagchowdhury, who's on this call with us today, who's our programme lead for the Climate Connection. And it's also supported very much by all of our colleagues who are working on particular areas. And our 5 focus areas really are around climate, sustainability and education, which includes a lot, which again, I'll show more information on. But working with teachers, for example, to support climate resilience and action in schools and further education. Also, very important to be working with young people as future climate leaders. And so we have initiatives within this area, which is about empowering young people to tackle issues in their communities and also ensuring they can contribute to national, international platforms with their voices and their thoughts on issues. As I mentioned, becoming more of an environmentally responsible organisation, which is around decarbonising our activities and thinking about net zero by 2040. Learning and sharing knowledge is something very important, and we're doing this today. So we participate in COPs, Conference of Youth. We support the UNFCCC objectives, and also we do a lot around sharing research. And just to mention about the artistic and cultural responses to climate change, which is my area, and I also know that is of great interest to this group. This actually forms part of a really dedicated strand we have within Culture Response to Global Challenges. We do, of course, look across all of our arts work around this area. It's just that we have a dedicated strand, which is co-led by myself and Rosanna, who you've already met, and also by a really, really fantastic group of colleagues who are delivering and developing very amazing, thoughtful and responsive projects, which are looking at cultural relations. And we are working, this strand works with artists, arts organisations, arts professionals to tackle the climate emergency and biodiversity loss through supporting the sector in a couple of different ways, to adopt more sustainable practices, providing opportunities to create innovative work which raises awareness, and also protecting cultural heritage at risk from climate change. So you can see on this slide, there's a little bit of a diagram about the different areas that we work in. Our work within creative commissioning is very much around interdisciplinary international collaborations, harnessing and working across arts, science, digital technologies and civil societies to raise awareness, explore solutions and inspire action. Our sustainable practice of innovative design. This includes a major training program for cultural festivals across Americas with UK partners, and we also have a lot of sustainable practice programs in the architecture, crafts, design and fashion industry. And Maria has posted some information about our work in the EU, which is fantastic. And we have a partnership between the British Council and DCMS, and we've supported quite a lot of projects there around preserving cultural heritage at risk from climate change. And we have some wonderful training programs. For example, we have a program with Black Mountains College in the UK, which is working with our colleagues in wider Europe, and that's about a training program for artists and creative professionals leading climate action within their communities. We do a lot of advocacy, and as I mentioned, this is also really woven across all of our arts work. So we have major seasons of culture, and this is increasingly a theme, and also we're really proud to be part of some of the EUNIC Cluster Fund projects too. Just to finish, we're really learning as we go. As we do things, we have a really good understanding and developing understanding of what the opportunities and challenges are. We're really keen to work in partnerships, support capacity building, making sure voices are represented, highlighting the role and value of arts, culture and heritage. The opportunities, there's so much in this area, there's so many crossovers. We're really thinking about kind of practice within the arts sector, so that keeps coming up more around the different sectors that we're working with. So thinking about that, we're also looking around monitoring and evaluation. How do we learn and monitor kind of our progress? And I guess from Rosanna and I's point of view as kind of focal points for this work across our global network, there is so much, and that's fantastic, but also there is so much. So how do we really bring these things together, and how do we make sure that what we're doing is being fed into bigger conversations? We really want to look at peer learning, but it's quite difficult sometimes when we're in delivery, and there's lots of intersections as mentioned. So I'll leave it there. Thank you, and apologies if I've gone slightly over time.
No apologies needed there, Nikki. Thank you so much for sharing the scope of the activity of the British Council in this field. I had the pleasure to be invited by your colleague Chansu of the wider Europe office to join this education project led by Black Mountains College in Wales. I was very inspired not only by the projects that were initiated by the different creatives joining in this online learning program. I was also inspired by their use of a Miro board. They made a beautiful river which demonstrated the flow of the different projects they were in, and I was happy to be able to join in one of the sessions during that flow somewhere on the river. Incredible work, and I'm really looking forward to host Chansu as part of a EUNIC mobility scheme in May. She will come to Amsterdam along with colleagues from Goethe in Brazil, as well as our head of communications in Stockholm. So the three of them, we will take on a good week of visits and also guided conversations together, and learn. Yeah, looking forward to connect even more strongly with your colleague there. And hello, Chansu, who is also in the call. I would just like to now also offer the opportunity, now that we're closing off the little block around headquarter initiatives, to open the floor to everyone here in the Zoom. I hope you're all doing well, and I can imagine that some of you may have a question about the different ways in which these three organizations have embedded climate ambition into their strategy quite strongly, or maybe when it comes to the design of programs. Really, anything is open as a possibility to ask them at this point. So if you have a question, feel free to raise your hand or speak up. Yes, I see Shane Colgan.
Simon, thanks. Thank you for that, and thanks to all the speakers. Really, really interesting stuff. I was just curious if any of the three organizations has had some thinking or maybe come with some solutions about the climate footprint associated with the people who attend cultural events. You know, if you think maybe you might put an opera on in a city in Europe and people might fly from all across Europe or across the world to see that. Just interested to see if anyone has thought about how to address that in strategies and actions. Thank you.
So the question relates to, of course, the mobility and flight of audiences, right? But also of artists. I would imagine how to address this conundrum of supporting mobility more and more, but also wanting to do that in a sustainable way. Is that a good?
Yeah, pretty much. Particularly the audience one. I guess I can I can put an action in my organization. I can make sure that you only travel on the train, or you do this, you that, because you're in my organization. I'm thinking about the audiences because they're a much more difficult group to control or influence. Thanks.
Interesting. Anyone of Lucille, Mara, or Nikki who would like to take that one up?
I could just say a couple of words if that's okay with everybody. So I think it's a really challenging one that we, not just us as an organisation, but I know that all of our sectors are really, really, really thinking very deeply about, and we're in constant conversation about this and kind of thinking about innovation, I guess, and different ways that we can look at this, as well as kind of physical place to place. So digital, I think, has been a huge thing that people have been thinking about how we can create mobility and opportunities for connections and for seeing and work in different ways. But also, as well as there's lots of things that have been, there's lots of resources being developed as part of our programs, and obviously through our partners such as Julie's Bicycle. So there's a sustainability of festivals guide, and also there's the Theatre Green Book and other initiatives that have kind of, where there's guidance has been developed to be able to support the sector to be thinking about this. So I think it's a journey for all of us, and one that is really important for us to be consulting with people in our sector and thinking about what they see as the opportunities, and where we may be able to kind of look at different ways forward. I think that's the thing, is that where there are a different range of approaches and ways forward to be able to support reducing carbon emissions, but still being able to kind of maintain the quality of real face-to-face, or people being able to see and experience work in a very authentic way.
All right. Thank you, Nikki, for your response. And maybe just moving on, considering the time, to the second person that raised their hand. That's Kirsten of DutchCulture.
Thank you, Simon, and thanks everyone for the interesting presentations. I just wanted to very briefly touch upon that last question, because I do find it interesting, because of course, many of us still work from a growth paradigm, right? Like more visitors, more touring, more countries reached. So I think that is also something to consider. And that brings me to my question, because most of us either give funding or receive funding or both? And to what extent is this also part of funding criteria? I know that it is for the Creative Europe program. I know that climate is one of the criteria, one of the boxes to tick, if you like. I know that in our case in the Netherlands, for our funding, it is not necessarily a hard criteria to actually meet. I was wondering if any of you have experience in this, either as a funder or as a funded organization.
Please let us know, any of the speakers. So the question is whether
I would like to answer. Oh, sorry, I like speaking.
Oh, yeah.
It's Susan Eriksson from Danish
Go
Cultural
ahead.
Institute. Yes, thank you. Actually, of course, I'm, you know, as an organization, as a person, we are what you call considered and try to do ourselves best. But last time I was in Turkey, I heard one comment which put a lot of question marks into my head. One of the very, you know, respected film festival directors and film person and art people told me, I'm so tired of Europe all the time trying to put everything to a kind of bureaucratical, diplomatic right box. Why we all have to make our projects change to climate or democracy or technology or this, you know. I couldn't answer because I work where I work. You know, I tried, but I still think about it. So that's the answer that sometimes I meet on the other side of the world. We all do that. We all consider. We all try to do our best. But when everything is, you know, like within a framework like this, very with tough lines, how we will exist and actually express ourselves maybe different ways. So I still think that's the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Fusun. And just also looking at the time right now, without letting our first panel of speakers respond to your question, Kirsten, I would like to pass on the word to Walter to express one question, knowing that also by the end of the block, by the end of our workshop, we have some time also where our Maria, Elena, and Eva, our experts, can tackle some of the questions raised. Walter, please, your thoughts. I'm curious to learn.
Thank you very much. I'm new to the exercise, so forgive me if I'm redundant. But as the Austrian experience, it's really one of a national effort, because for the purpose of making events sustainable, we are part of a whole network which is called Green Events Austria Network, which is composed of representative of all federal states and of 3 ministries, including the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but also climate protection and sports. And what we do, and I'm very short, we certify events as green events, as sustainable events, domestically, and that goes from very small theater events to big world championships in skiing, which is not culture, but it's also a kind of mass event. And we want now, I mean, this is our ambition. We want to extend this certification effort to our embassies and cultural institutes abroad. Thank you very much. I look forward to meeting you in Paris anyway. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Walter. Looking forward to see you. Likewise. Okay, so with much yet to be discussed, I believe, and maybe not also to be solved or discussed within the time frame of a 2-hour workshop, I think these are very great and recurring questions that we have to ask ourselves in the larger field. So thank you for your contributions there, Walter and Kirsten too, and Fusun. Now we would like to dedicate some attention of the last part of this workshop to some of the projects that have taken place. Also as a consequence, I think, of the great work that has been done in Berlin was a commitment to rethink what the cluster fund could do in addressing the topic of the climate emergency. And it did so in two important ways, I believe. I think on the one hand, generically overall, sustainability criteria were embedded as a 10-point obligatory field in the evaluation sheet of the different projects. So from the total number of 100 points that you could score, 10 of them had to be scored in sustainability, regardless of the contents of the project. But then also with the optional focus being there as some sort of a nudge, to use Nikki's word also, a nudge towards these type of projects and collaborations. I think the percentages of climate-related and climate-oriented projects has really shot up in the last 2 years, and this is something promising because it responds to a need. It responds to also ideas that maybe have been circulating in a network for a longer time that now we're encouraged to take hold. And we're very happy to be joined by two colleagues that have been involved in cluster fund projects globally. First of all, it's not even directly a EUNIC colleague, but we're very pleased to be joined by Elena Luft, who is the curator of the EUNIC Romania cluster fund project, Flowing Streams. Michelle, thanks for dropping the links in there. Before I pass the word on to you, Adelina, I'm very curious to learn from your perspective as curator of this multi-residency project, how you've seen the project in its first year, and also how you're looking forward to its extension in the cluster. I can just say on a personal note that the cluster in Amsterdam, or the cluster in the Netherlands, was inspired by the architecture of your project, and we really took it as an encouragement to keep on thinking in the way that we were thinking. And so now the project Zoop Connections has also this multi-residency approach. I would love for you to share something about Flowing Streams, the project that took place with the support of EUNIC Romania and the Cluster Fund. Adelina, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Simon, and I'm very happy to be here in this meeting. A lot of the credits go to the team in Romania from EUNIC Romania, who invited me last year to join this project as a curator. So it was an invitation from the cluster to curate the program, but it was a joint effort. We thought about this together in terms of the structure, like having a multiple residency and working with local organizations. I'm gonna just share my screen so you don't look at my face only. There are some images from the residencies, and hopefully you can see them rolling. I will just introduce briefly the project. So the Flowing Streams multi-residency project facilitated an exercise to create a bridge between artistic propositions and the rural world, between European practitioners and 7 local organizations in Romania, and also between existing hydrological conditions and future possibilities of restoring human-water relations. Thinking through and with waters from the specific Eastern European locality, and for this specific project, led me to formulate a curatorial framework that looked into the broad aspects of the cultural ecology of water. This is largely understood as the relational processes emerging between humans and different situated bodies of water. It is an investigation into how people come to signify, represent, value, manage, and distribute water in different times and spaces, and how in return water transforms people. By thinking about ways to recuperate the social nature of waters, its particular situatedness and relationality, the intention was to ultimately reclaim knowledge linked to a specific territory, such as the loose geographical Romanian landscape, which brought all the residents closer to a variety of bodies of water, unique mineral water springs, the largest natural lake and salt lake in the country, the second largest river in Europe, as well as small but crucial mountain rivers, streams, and water springs. This exploration implied looking at local cosmovisions and relationships with customs, traditions, or vernacular infrastructures of water management, as a way to map a cartography of existing or imagined socio-ecological practices that could potentially restore our relationship with the hydrological world. Multiple operators, voices, approaches, and practices come together under the project's umbrella to add nuanced layers to an important conversation we alone cannot have. As much as we had hoped to navigate these abundant streams and think of water as a carrier of hydrocommons, the year in which this residency took place, 2024, recorded the hottest temperatures in many, many years. So dryness was prevalent everywhere across the country, as epitomized by one of the residents from Germany, Joanna von Essen, who called her intervention at one of the guest host organization. She called it vanishing streams, not flowing streams. So as a curator of and culture organizer, I operate in an emerging field within the culture and artistic sphere that engages in projects that are socially engaged and interdisciplinary. In my opinion, artists today are invested in, and at the same time, they are more and more supported by institutions and funding bodies to engage in projects that are collaborative and co-produced together with different constituents, scientists, architects, landscapers, ecologists, activists, farmers, and so on, to tackle together and to find solutions to diverse issues in relation to the cascading effects of climate change. The impact of cultural and artistic projects, such as that of flowing streams in particular, are not immediately felt. What these projects contribute to is to forge and support alliances between initiatives that have common affinities and whose purpose are moving towards a common goal: to restore and safeguard biodiversity, to set examples of ethical and ecological cultural work, to raise awareness of our limited resources, and to think of alternatives for living together on a damaged planet. These projects are creating resistances in the face of destructive capitalism by asking important and critical questions of why and how we ended up here. What can we learn from the past, from other non-Western epistemologies, from the peripheries, from the work of academia, from emerging policies, from communities of care, and most importantly, they ask the question of how we can engage different publics, a discussion that you also have raised in today's meeting, from an honest, empathetic, and down-to-earth approach via the tools of artistic sensitivity and sensibility to understand and to join in a common struggle towards climate and ecological justice. So this was, a short reflection on Flowing Streams project, and I will just end this share. And we ended up with a very nice publication that maybe some of you also got in touch with. It's still, we have a lot of copies in Romania, but I think it's very important to think of an outcome that can circulate further, and that this project, because it had the support from EUNIC, it could also manifest into like this material, manifestation. And it will circulate among peers and among the artistic world, which I think needs to see more and more such initiatives, and to get a bit out of this paradigm of constant artistic production that is damaging also. It's not really ecological. So it's a way of like also entering this broader artistic field and today's overproduction. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Adelina. Thank you. Well, I have plenty of questions to follow up with you about the overlaps between two projects. That will have to wait for another time. I want to thank you so far, but I think some important touch points that you raised that was also expressed in the questions. How do we rethink our idea of cultural value? Is it about reconfiguring relationships, finding other relationships rather than production of new material, or bringing our idea of production to a halt, perhaps, when we think about events and the number of people that go to them? I think these are the types of projects that are shaking a little bit the foundations of what cultural relations can do and what they are for. And I encourage everyone to find out more about this project for sure. It was very wonderful to hear you speak about it. Moving on to another cluster fund project that has some wide-ranging impact, I think. I would like to pass on the word to our colleague Leonard Heidecker, who is the head of the Goethe Institute in Mongolia, who has been leading on the project Nomad Spirits in EUNIC Mongolia, also supported by the Cluster Fund and now supported by the Cluster Fund for the second time. Please, Leonard, I would love for you to share a little bit on also the topic of awareness raised in the country of Mongolia through the different interventions that were made in the landscape and the art that was made there. So I would love to hand the word to you.
Great, thank you very much, Simon. Hello, warm good evening from Mongolia. The day is ending. We're already approaching the nighttime. I'm sharing my screen so you see a bit more. I hope you can see it. Yeah. Yeah, okay. Great. Yeah, I'm Leonhard, and I'm going to talk a bit about our project Nomad Spirit, Art for Public Awareness of Climate Change, which we implemented here in Mongolia with EUNIC Mongolia, together with our colleagues from Finland, France, Germany, and Austria. In Mongolia, we're a quite young cluster. We have 10 members, of 2 are in Ulaanbaatar, 8 are in Beijing. So it's a little bit tricky for us to do things, but we are very active and we're happily implementing mostly bigger projects, and we're happy to have the continued support from the Cluster Fund. So let's start right into what did we do, Nomad Spirit. So the aim of our project Nomad Spirit last year was to raise public awareness of climate change through contemporary art. And therefore, we invited 4 artists from Europe and 4 artists from Mongolia to come together in the Middle Gobi, south of Ulaanbaatar, to work on site-specific art installations in a very small village in the Gobi Desert. Why did we choose the Gobi Desert? The Gobi Desert, as pretty much whole Mongolia, is heavily influenced or heavily impacted by climate change. It's getting drier and drier. We're barely seeing any rain anymore, and the traditional way of life in Mongolia, herding and holding livestock, is nearly coming to extinct by herders leaving the dry areas, moving up north. So that's why we went down south, going to one of those a little bit abandoned villages, and organized a couple of activities with the artists there and the local community, but also the community of Ulaanbaatar, and of course an online community. It took place last year in October in Donkov province. We managed through an open call to reach very good feedback and very good artists. We're very happy to have 8 artists, which you see here, and the artwork in the left. And without saying more, I'm going to start right into a short video we made that gives you a bit better impression of what we did here. right. I hope it was visible. I'll go, in terms of the time, I'll go straight to the outcome. What did we reach? So we had in the project, in the small village, we had over 260 people participating, and mostly the artists, and then the local community. We work with the local school kids, with the authorities, and we also work with the authorities of the nearby main city of the Gobi province. That was the activities we hold there. And then we invited influencers to visit the site, and we managed to attract one very famous influencer in Mongolia who came to the site, discovering the art scenes after the project. And with just one video of him, he gained 350 views on Facebook, which, just to give you an impression, is around about 10% of Mongolia's population. We have only 3.5 million people living here. So the project, we can really say, got viral here. It's something that has never happened before. Usually, the focus is always on the capital. Everyone is looking on Ulaanbaatar. Everyone is going to Ulaanbaatar. We did directly the other thing. We went out of Ulaanbaatar and went to those sites where we can see things are changing and climate change happening and making people struggle very hardly. We also had a lot of publications on Mongolian newspapers and major TV channels. Some of the biggest in the country broadcasted and published articles on it. I linked a link to the website for more activities, and we also have a full documentary for those interested that will be sent to you later. What was the impact of our project? We think Nomad Spirit brought public attention to the small village of Derensum, seeing how climate change is actually having an effect on the local people. And also we managed to make this place a little bit more attractive. The good thing about this project is that all the artwork is still there. And already for this year, tourist groups are going to come and media will report about this thing that happened there, which is a thing that hasn't happened here before. We also have an educational value. We managed to incorporate the whole school of the village into the project and all the school kids. So they were questioning what is having sustainability, climate change, the nomadic heritage, how all those things link together and how can they brought together in balance. And then the last thing is, of course, the artistics exchange. All the European artists, but also the Mongolian artists not only had a fantastic time here, but are, of course, going back home to their respective countries. And this project will also have an impact on their work they're doing, processing the topic of climate change. And probably the most important impact, we are going to continue. We just had an open call published in Europe and received over 100 applications for just 4 seats. So we see that not only the general public is very interested, but also the artists. It's a topic for artists they like working on. That's at least our experience. And it will take place in June in another place in the Gobi Desert. And not only will we do art-specific sites, but we will also focus a little bit more on media arts, bringing the things more from or not next to but the real life to the digital life, and also make it more experienceable for people who can't go there. Any questions? Just drop me an email. I'll be happy to give some more information on it. And yeah, this way pass on to Simon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Leonard. I wanted to give you an applause. I was just looking for the button, but I'll make sure to do that to you and to do that to all of our speakers today in 10 minutes from now. But we reserved the 10 minutes of time towards the end of the block to gather some thoughts. And also we will take you a little bit into our thinking about how we will take everything we've heard today and in the meantime into our workshop in Paris, which will really be working on the dynamics of that tree. But before we do, and before we will show what has taken place now in our tree of change, I would love to give the word back to Elena and Eva to reflect perhaps a little bit. They gave us, of course, the introduction and the presentation on the sustainability toolkit, and now you've heard many of our colleagues speak about different steps and progress that we've been having, and also the challenges, very honestly, that some of us are facing, some of the more open questions. I was wondering if you could reflect on some of the things that you've heard, and whether there's already some very actionable steps that we could take in reaction to these challenges, for example. So with that free, open question, I would love to give the word to you.
Thank you. Yes, thank you everyone for your presentation. There is a lot of food for thought, and of course Eva and I will also take our time after the webinar to go more in depth your initiatives. Really interesting to see that everything has been done. I just wanted to comment on a couple of things that emerged from the conversation. One is the question of mobility, and the other one is the topic of urgency. So, of course, this could be explored further, but on the mobility, this is something that Eva and I deal, especially when we work a lot with the music festivals. And so there is always the question of mobility when it comes to tour and so on. What I can share from my experience, and then maybe Eva wants to add something, is that first of all, like in-person meetings are really important. So yes, when not necessary, it's okay to do them online, but human interaction is really important. So what we see a lot of artists and organizations doing is organizing their tours in a way that it reduces the flying as much as possible, especially in Europe, where there is a quite good railway system. Artists organize their touring in a way that they can move easily from one place to another without flying back and forth. We personally, what a lot of environmental organizations that I work with, they have a policy where basically, again, especially in Europe, I'm currently in Asia, and in Asia it's a little bit different, but in Europe with the train system, a lot of organizations, they basically there is this policy of traveling by train if it takes less than 8 hours to get somewhere. I know it's still a lot, but especially for shorter distance travel, it's advisable to use the train. And a lot of other cultural events, what they do is that they look for venues that are accessible by public transport. And also sometimes they provide incentives to the audiences, for example, with discounts on tickets and so on for audiences that use a lower carbon, transportation means that have a lower carbon impact. So these are just a few thoughts. I don't know, Eva, if you want to add something on this one.
Well, yeah, transport and travel is one of the main challenges, especially for attendee travel. And it has one of the biggest impacts. So I would say that a strong communication campaign is also very essential, using all communication channels and sending information to the ticket holders of the event via the mailing list, for example. It's an easy way to let them know about your strategy, what you're aiming for. And exactly like Elena said, implemented different incentives to encourage attendees to take more sustainable means of transportation. A possibility is also making agreements with public transport companies or train companies, or including public transport ticket into the ticket for the event, for example. Or if, for example, public transport is not an alternative, then to encourage people to carpool, using different nudges. And yeah, maybe if public transport is not an option, then organizing shuttle buses, or also it could be if train is an option, then organizing special events at these trains or shuttle buses. Basically everything that could add more value and different experience for the attendees. These are my 2 cents.
Thank you, Eva. Yeah, and another thing that I wanted to respond to that I think was mentioned by Fusun, sorry if I'm mispronouncing it, is that the narrative of urgency. So sometimes it can be a bit tiresome, especially because we've been hearing for at least a decade that the time is now to act and we are living in a crisis. So that's why it's always advisable to look for different entry points, different key messages depending on the audience. I would suggest, first of all, like Eva just mentioned, also like having a communication strategy in place is always important, because if we don't communicate our initiatives, it's like people will not be aware that they are taking place. In the case of the urgency, I would suggest to focus on the agency and possibility, And this is also, so basically like inspiring people, showing what's possible, showing that the solutions are out there, but also that they're not imposed from from the top down, but that everyone can be parting of creating something beautiful together. And I think especially this is where artists and cultural institutions can play a great role in helping us imagine alternative, positive futures, so that sustainability doesn't have to be a burden. It can be done in a creative way. It can be done in a way that it's inspiring and where we feel that we are actually contributing to something positive. Because at the end of the day, a lot of people, what they want to feel is that they're contributing to the betterment of society. And aware of time, I'll just share our last slide on the next steps. So let me see.
Okay, can I say just thank you for your comments? I'm aware of it. I've been working in the art business for over 35 years. I'm not that young, and thank you so much. We all do our good parts. Sometimes it's difficult to change, but there is nothing else to do than fight. So we all know that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so let me see. Can you see my screen? I think you can see okay. Right, so the next steps. So just a few things. So of course we encourage you to check if you haven't done it yet, or the sustainability kit toolkit, or check the parts that you haven't checked yet. If you have any questions about how to use specific resources, please feel free to reach out. And then collaborate and share. It's whenever you're like we did today, it's great to share the initiatives that you're doing, also how to inspire others, and especially it's really great to exchange best practices, so that again we don't need to reinvent the wheel, but we can see what others are doing that is working and take it on, but also what is not working, so that others will not repeat that. The third point, prepare for COP and other political moments. This is a crucial year, 2025. There are a lot of very important political meetings that are happening. It's the 30th anniversary of COP, which this year is taking place in Brazil in November, plus the conference on biodiversity. We are 5 years away from a lot of international goals about reaching sustainability and biodiversity by 2030. So there are a lot of conversation happening in the political space. And so we see that there are also a lot of possibilities for cultural institutes to be thought leaders and show what they know, their expertise, and like I said before, involve different audiences. And also now at COP, there is a cultural pavilion. So culture is also becoming more present on the agenda. So these are just a few ideas, and we hope that our presentation has been useful today. And again, feel free to reach out if you have any questions on the toolkit or other ideas that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you both. Thank you both for these wonderful few reflections on our workshop today. I know that you have a hard exit now at 1, Maria Elena. So I want to also say goodbye at this moment and thank you for your contribution throughout the process. I would like to take a little bit of time to jump in where you left off with the next steps and see how that is represented visually on our Miro board. So no need to go through the full carbon cycle altogether, but just a little bit of a pointer at where we are currently. And I think the sustainability toolkit is a great place to zoom in on. Because as you can see right here in the tree, which has been filling up thanks to tireless work of tree climbing Rosanna, she has filled the Miro board with many of the project examples and also some of the strategic examples of the contributions by our colleagues. So we see that the sustainability toolkit also falls in this very important category, the internal dimension of education, training, and empowering. After all, a toolkit, what is it for other than to guide us and to educate us further in how to implement positive change in our organizations. These continue to be ongoing questions, right, for both EUNIC as a whole network, but also for individual institutions or even your embassies or local branches. If you have great examples of exchange of knowledge between colleagues and inspiration, then please feel free to tell them. I will share a link so that you have open access to Miro right after the workshop, and you can navigate and browse it on your own time. What awaits us in the next 2 days in Paris is to really focus on this important aspect of impact and storytelling. So based on everything we know that happens and takes place and emerges within our network, how do we then build narratives, and how do we make sure we talk about the projects that we are involved in meaningful ways? And those meaningful ways may depend on the platforms that we go to spread the word. So after the impact and storytelling, we just added here the possibility and agency are important narrative tools there. We will go to identify what are these important moments that we're talking about, in which we can talk about climate and cultural relations, in which we can advocate for its importance. And I see also that here new fields, new circles have been added to identify more of those key moments, which is great. So we will try to draw lines and make connections between those different advocacy moments and the different programs and projects that we mentioned, to see what are great examples from our network, not only from our own organizations, but really using EUNIC as a network of peers and collaborators, so that we can say, for example, the cultural relations method is a successful one when it comes to tackling climate action goals. So we are working on it, as you can see, as we speak. Rosanna is adding another advocacy moment, the UN Days, Water, Biodiversity, Zero Waste and Earth Days. Thanks to, I think, a colleague in Turkey adding that in the chat. Again, I will add you to the Miro board, and you will receive an email in which you can edit. There's no obligation, but if you think this is something I would love to contribute to, it's quite intuitive. You can see post-its that are gathered right here to move your way up and around the tree, and that feedback we will take with us to Paris. Voila, I would think that shows you a glimpse of the work that we have ahead of us, which is quite a bit. But I'm really looking forward to that exercise in 2 days. And I just would like to pass on the word to our host and colleague Melanie, also co-leading on the knowledge sharing workshop, to tell us about the program ahead of us in the next few activities.
Yes, thank you, Simon. Yes, indeed, we look forward to welcoming some of you in Paris at the Institut Français for the next couple of days, where we will look into the next actions that EUNIC could take. Now that we have this beautiful tree and mapping of what we collectively do, and this practical toolkit for all members, it will be important to plan the next steps and define where EUNIC can act for greening cultural relations, especially in terms of strategy and advocacy as a network. So we will focus on different areas where we can make joint efforts on domestic perspectives, but also on global scale with someone from the UNESCO, and of course on EU perspectives. We'll also have the chance to visit the Académie du Climat, a public institution entirely dedicated to climate, and I hope we'll get inspired by this place too. So we have two full days for this, and we look forward to it. Right, so unless anyone has any last words to say, I guess I'm gonna close this webinar now. So on behalf of the whole team, I'd like to thank you all for joining today. Thank you very much for your very useful contributions into EUNIC's journey. And wherever you are, enjoy the rest of your day.